Thank you for coming to my talk this afternoon. I'm Fulvio Casali. I live and work in Seattle, USA. I should put this up. All right. And I'd like to talk about an idea, the idea that I call, or is called, full stack reactivity. And this idea finds its expression in the implementation of a particular framework that I'm going to describe in a little bit. But this talk is not about that framework, it's about the idea. So I'd like to keep that in mind in how we could use it for Plone. So who here would describe themselves as a web developer? Raise your hand. Almost everybody. Those, not those two.
Should we start in 5 minutes? What's the agenda?
The agenda is 3:20. Technically I'm late already. So I'm going to go out on a limb and make a blanket statement here. And Amazon.com started in '95. The browser wars were in '96, '97, '98. And so obviously there were people writing code to create applications on the web. But I think, I could be wrong here, but I think back in the day they would have called themselves software developers. They were writing C applications, C++, that were hooking into CGI, and maybe Perl, and maybe this other stuff. But what happened was there was a need, because yes, there were a lot of static HTML pages on the internet. The internet the web was in the ascending the part of the hockey stick curve where it starts to get steepest. And so there was a need, and that need was filled by frameworks, templating languages, and all kinds of stuff. I don't put here Zope here because I don't want to make a claim that Zope was the thing that launched web development, but it was one of the pieces that certainly helped. And I posit that we are at the point in transformation in how web development is done, and I hope to convince you of this. So here's my definition of full stack reactivity. It's an architecture for web application development that allows every level of the stack to respond in real time to changes in the data, no matter where it happens. And real time here is intended in web terms. It's not medical life-saving equipment real time. It's not nuclear power plant real time. It's, milliseconds are fine. Milliseconds is real time, even seconds. So, okay, here's the outline of my talk. I'm going to start with a demo and then describe a little bit the pieces that go into that demo. And I'm going to try to share what I think this means for Plone. All right, let's go with a demo. Oh, it's down here. Nope, wrong one. Okay, so, nope, I think this is the wrong one. So here is something that looks like Plone. And it has an add new menu. It has content types. And I can add a content type. I have hacked it so I don't have to type any fields. It's just going to put Latin into the fields and come back immediately. And what happened when I added this collection was it appeared immediately. There was no server request response round trip. And it also appeared immediately here, as well as in the total count up here and in a few other places. So that's nice, but let's now look at the server side. Okay. Let me restart this. Yeah. The perils of live demos. Okay, I guess I'm going to have to skip that one. So what I was hoping to show you, I'll describe it, was that over in my console, I have a shell into the database directly. So I am actually working on the server, and I could issue an insert statement on the server, create a content item directly in the database, and it would be reflected immediately in the browser without any page refresh, any page reload. So this is actually not a front-end client. This is actually a full-stack application. And I can actually show this by opening two windows. Into the same site. So on the left I'm logged in, on the right I'm not. Although I should be, but oh no, sorry, this is okay. So now I'm going to add something on the left, and it's immediately reflected in another browser. So, in fact, if anybody wants to volunteer and go to plone.meteor.com right now, that would be interesting. I have a login menu up here, and it allows you to log in with your GitHub account. And if you're concerned about privacy, I'm just using GitHub for federated login, so I don't hijack any information, and this is all open source, so you can also check it out. And let's see. So the content types that I have here are actually fake. These are I just have them here in order. The only purpose for these, there you go, Tisto, Pibaro, there you go. People are contributing. And I can look at the list of all items submitted by this user. I have implemented a simple workflow So if I owned this content item, I would be able to make it private or public. The batching is a little also not Plone. It's kind of following the infinite scrolling model of paginating. Not that I think this is appropriate for content management systems, but it's just to show that it's available. Like I was saying, the content types are just so that I can have different icons here. They all have the same fields. They just have a title and a description, and an author, a publication date, a size, and a modified and a review state. And there are two content types that are a little special. They're down here at the bottom. They're slow success and slow fail. And I put them here to illustrate one feature, which is the latency compensation. So the way these are implemented is the server will respond 5 seconds later with either a success or a fail, depending on which one you chose. And the way this works is the client always assumes that the action will succeed. And when the server responds back with the result of the operation, the client will adjust, will respond accordingly. So for example, if I say slow success, there's a pop-up here that says the server takes 5 seconds. And initially this was, the string client was appended, and 5 seconds later, it changes to server. If I say slow fail, this one will always fail, and in 5 seconds, now it's gone, because the client catches up to the server 5 seconds later. Let's see. So you can also remove items, you can make them private. The connections here are probably all from the same IP address, almost. Maybe there's some VPNs. This shows me all the registered users, and I can go to the items that they've created, and that's it in a nutshell. Yes. So that's the demo of this this application, and so let's move on to the description. So surprise, surprise, it's not Plone. There's no Plone here at all. Nothing. It's a Meteor app. I just put a sunburst skin on top of Meteor and took basically an example out of a book and made it into this app. A couple of caveats about this demo. Why did I use Sunburst? Why did I use Plone 4? And two answers to that. For one thing, I did not want to pollute the Plone 5 message. A lot of people still have not even seen Plone 5, and I don't want this video to go out there and people being confused that Plone has this functionality. And also, I thought it would be more impactful because you all know how Sunburst works, so if you see this, it might be a little more impressive. Also, most importantly, it's just a demo. I'm not proposing that Plone implement these things or these particular features. I'm sure there are people who have better ideas about what to do with full stack reactivity if we decide to use it. So let me give you a brief introduction to what Meteor is. So on Wikipedia, you can find the technical definition here. It's open source, although if you go down to the bottom of the page, you'll see that it's actually a different type of open source model than the one we know. It's owned by a private company, the Meteor Development Group. They got a lot of money from incubators, but they've done a really good job. It's completely written in JavaScript, and it is a web application framework. It's written with Node.js. It produces cross-platform code for web, Android, and iOS. And most importantly, it uses a publish-subscribe pattern. So data changes are propagated to clients without the developer having to write any synchronization code at all. And I think that is the strongest point. So it is a web development application framework. And in that sense, it has a lot more in common with Pyramid or Django than it does with Angular or React. Angular in particular is a front-end framework. You make GUIs with it. React, almost the same. Except that it's written in JavaScript, but that's the only thing it has in common with Angular and React. And in my opinion, it has everything that Plonistas love about Pyramid, and I hope to show a bit of those. And actually, even more specifically, it's particularly suited for single-page apps, more than just generic web applications. And it has a very polished development environment, similar to Pyramid, in my opinion. So just a couple of marketing talking points. So these are kind of the selling points that you can find on Meteor.com right now. It's the JavaScript app platform. And I would love it if people thought these things about Plone. Creating modern real-time apps in just a fraction of the time. Cross-platform. And some numbers. Just to give you an idea of the popularity of Meteor, there are almost 8,000 packages, almost 16,000 Stack Overflow questions, lots of installs, almost 30,000 stars on GitHub. There are hundreds of meetups in Seattle alone. I'm subscribed to like the local Meteor developers group, and I just get lots of emails every week just from one city. Google Trends. This is the kind of the interest line for Meteor since it was founded in 2012, and the curve is rising. To compare for comparison, comparing it with Angular, of course it's less popular, but just so that we don't get too big for our britches, we have Drupal, WordPress, and oh yeah, Plone. And also to compare Plone with Meteor, that's where we are. So 7 principles, I'm gonna describe these. So there is no HTML sent over the network. It's all JSON. It's all JavaScript. And more importantly, it's the same JavaScript both on the server and on the client. That's what isomorphic means. And that makes it easy to acquire talent and learn Meteor because you only have to know one thing. The database everywhere. There is, in order to make this work, there is a local cache of the data that the page needs at the moment in the client. And you use the exact same API, because it's the same code, you use exactly the same API in the browser and on the server to work on the data. Latency compensation is what I showed in the demo. So the client prefetches the data and simulates the models to make it look like the server method calls returned instantly. Full stack reactivity is the meat of this talk, so I'm going to go more deeply into it. It builds on Node, so it uses it can use any Node package, and it's very simple. It's very, very simple, and it by design. It was designed to be easy to learn, yet powerful. Okay, so data on the wire. So actually, let's go back to the browser and start the console. Go to, go to the network tab and refresh. So, of course, the initial load pulls down a bunch of JavaScript and a bunch of, there's some CSS, some couple of images. But the interesting bit is this one. This is where the remainder, like from now on, once the page has been loaded the first time, from now on, everything goes over WebSocket. And also interesting, if you notice, is that every call and response here are in the order of 100, 200 bytes. And that's actually kind of interesting to keep in the back of your mind, that most of the data that we're publishing for our content types really is that big. It's not much more. Unless there are images on the page, but yeah, okay, so there's that. So JavaScript everywhere, as I mentioned, same code on the server and on the client, with some exceptions. There, by convention, Meteor applications can use, you're not forced to, but you can use special folders. So if you put any folder that's called client, will be only run on the client. Any folder that's called server will contain code that will only be run on the server. And that has reasons. Of course, some code you don't want to run on the server. For example, UI code. It makes no sense to have UI code run on the server. Likewise, for security, there are some functions, permission checking, that you don't want to run on the client, or database manipulation. And then every other code that lives anywhere other than in those two folders runs everywhere. And then you have a certain default load order also by convention, which is configurable. Then database everywhere. Okay, this I would have shown you in the console. Up above, that is what you can run in the JavaScript console in the browser. I have a collection called content items, and I use the Mongo function on that collection. And I return a JSON object. On the server, I go to the Mongo shell. It's just slightly different because the root of the database is called DB, and the collection itself has a name in lowercase. But other than that, the API is exactly the same. So you get the same data. There are ways, of course, you don't want to have the entire application data in your client for scalability reasons. Think of Twitter. So there is this idea of publications and subscriptions. Up above you have the server, and below you have the client. And on the server you have all the data. On the client, you subscribe to just one collection, and not even to every attribute of that of the items in that collection, just some. And you can do fancy things like combine multiple publications or multiple collections into the same publication, so that in the same collection you get documents that may have different attributes, different sets of attributes. Latency compensation, I showed you, and so it's another name for it is optimistic UI, but this is actually implemented at the protocol layer, not in the UI. Full stack reactivity, we'll talk more about that. It embraces the ecosystem, so it's compatible with Node. Of course, the fact that code runs both on the client and on the server means that some things do not work out of the box, but any NPM package can be used by Meteor packages. Now, this one, so when I built this demo, I had the most fun coding that I've had in decades, which kind of makes me sad to think about that. I haven't had that much fun since then, but it's true. Okay, another thing. I worked a bit on patterns, on mockup. I do some JavaScript stuff, but I'm an average developer. I do, if I can avoid learning something, I will. And so far I have avoided like the plague, all the grunts, all the bowers, all that stuff. I just cut and copy commands. I don't know what they do. In Meteor, I didn't have to. It's all hidden, if you will, behind just one command. Meteor add, Meteor create, Meteor deploy. But it does a lot of stuff. I mean, it does package, it does version, package resolution, and runs tasks, deploys stuff, and so on. And it has a server, database, and so it's just, I just didn't have to worry about it. There was an article earlier this year on Forbes.com with a title. It was kind of catchy, and they published this diagram, value to novice developers, basically placing different frameworks or applications on this two axes, value to novice developers and value to expert developers. And where would Plone fall? I don't know. Guess.
C++.
Like C++? Probably, in some ways. Yeah, the opinions may vary, but the point of the article is that Meteor is all the way up in the top right. Same value both for novice and expert developers. Another way of saying that is that when you're building an application, there are all these stacks, and Meteor takes care of most of them. You just have to worry about your front end and your app logic. Oh yeah, this is something. There are, of course, many companies many startups that have been created that run on Meteor, that use Meteor for their business, for their the application that they sell. And one that I wanted to show is over here. This is a Trello lookalike, and it changed. If you are, when it first came out, it was called Libreboard, and it was actually almost identical to Trello. In fact, I think they got into trouble because of it, and that's probably why they changed the name, and it looks a little different. But the point is, two guys built this in 2 months. I mean, imagine building Trello in 2 months with one other guy or girl. It's just, all right. Reactivity. Little example. I think, where is it? Okay, this is something you can actually play with in your browser, Meteorpad.com. It's sort of like Fiddle.js, but like Fiddle.js, but it's actually a full stack running Meteor application. So it has down here you see it starts your server and it stores your data in a database. It has 5 files. The largest one is a CSS file, over half. There are 3 JS files and 1 HTML template. This one runs both on the client and on the server. It creates a collection. So both on the client and on the server. On the server in the Mongo database. On the client in the client's mini Mongo cache. A Mongo collection is like an array of dicts in Python speak. So on the server, when the application starts, and if the collection is empty, it just populates it with how many? A few random names and some random values. And then the client has, so this is the main body of the application, and it refers to a template which has, this is very similar to a tal repeat. This in turn refers to another template, so that would be like a macro, metal macro. So it refers to this one. And where does this come from? This comes from this client that runs on this code that runs on the client. So the client code can have helpers associated with templates and events associated with templates. Think of these as very similar to jQuery events, except that the definition is kind of in reverse order. So first you say the event name and then the selector. And okay. So down here, this div, that's this one. This is shown, it either shows this part or this part, depending on this selected name. The selected name is a helper function that looks at a session variable and looks whether whether there is anything in the session variable, basically. If there's nothing, then it shows one thing. If there is something in the session, then it shows a name. So I'm going to click, and now there's a name. And it adds a button. And this button also has a helper with a click event. All right. So at some point, the collection players gets updated here. Here, this is where I click this button. The collection gets updated with the name and adding 5 points. So when I click this, Carl Friedrich Gauss gets 5 points. And again, this runs both on the server and on the client, because you could actually copy that URL, put it into browsers, and you would see this thing happening in both browsers at the same time. Okay, so this is a block diagram, very simplified. Server is on top, client is on the bottom, and the next one is going to be reversed. So the database on the server has a mirror image on the client, and the thing that makes this all work reactively is this library here, tracker. This is what allows you to, okay, so I didn't actually make this clear. That code is all it takes. You do not write any synchronization. The synchronization is taken care of for you by tracker. Tracker basically keeps track of which variables are used in which computations, and if any variable or object or data element is changed in one place, it reruns the computations everywhere else to update. The Meteor API defines a whole bunch of objects that you're going to use all the time as reactive by default, but you can define your own reactive data source. Like, not every variable in JavaScript in Meteor code is reactive, but you can make them reactive. Tracker is a very small library, and it's standalone. It doesn't depend on Meteor in any way, so it can be used in any other JavaScript application. Okay, I probably won't have time to show this. This is okay. The Meteorpad that I showed before, this one. Notice here on the left, it has 2 packages at the top, AuthorPublish and Insecure. These are there for development. Insecure means it doesn't actually do any security checking. So you can, from the client, from the console, you could actually say players.update. You could actually copy and paste this code into the console, and it would actually write directly to the server database. If you remove this package, the insecure package, that is gone. That capability is gone. So the only way you can write to the server database is through the server. The AuthorPublish is a package that basically it basically puts an entire replica of all the data that is on the server into the client cache, everything. And of course, for production, you want to remove it. And when you're in production, you're going to use publications and subscriptions. So you start from a collection, and this one is, it's neither on the client nor on the server, it's on both. So both client and server will create this collection. Then on the server, you publish it by defining a function in Meteor publish and returning a cursor on this collection. And on the client, you subscribe to it by name, not by the collection, but by name. And this will put stuff into the clipboards collection. Then here's actually we can skip this because this is just this template all it does is provide an A with a class, with an ID, which up here, okay, up at the top, you see the event click. So here, this is how you call methods. This is how basically you ensure that the client cannot write to the database by forcing the client to call methods. In this case, we're dealing with a clipboard. I could have called this cut. This is actually a cut, and I pass it an item. And then later, if it's successful, if the server comes back with a success, then I'm also deleting it. I'm doing it in the client. I could have done it in the server. On the server, no, this is everywhere. Yeah, right, because methods have to run both on the client and on the server for latency compensation. So this is the name of the method, and this is the Mongo collection. It inserts something into it. So now both the client cache and the database, the server database, have this. And then in the template, this is a reactive variable. So this computation will run again because this has changed. So the return value of this has changed, and therefore the return value of the whole function must change. And when that happens, this condition changes in the template. And so the template now will show this markup. So this is basically, step back. I'm using the cut menu. There was nothing in my clipboard before. Now I've cut something, there's something in the clipboard. Therefore, I want to show the paste button, the paste link. Now the paste link appears. DDP is the protocol that the server database and the client cache talk over, which is basically REST on WebSockets. There is a Python implementation. So this is the protocol between the server database and the client cache. Notice, by the way, Blaze is the templating engine that came by default initially with Meteor. There are now React and Angular implementations, and I think they are officially supported. So you can use an Angular front end that uses Meteor as the backend application, and likewise React. Mongo is the default backing database, but there are other implementations in the works. Oh, actually, REST is already working. Mobile clients are automatically available. I mean, they come with you don't have to do anything, basically. You have a mobile client right away with the code that you write. Hot code reload, hot deploys, hot versions updates, that's kind of, I mean, hot code reload is kind of expected, but you can actually deploy to production and have the application keep running. And also update all versions while the application is running. The development environment is super simple. You say Meteor create, this would be like Mr. Bob. It gives you a template application. Meteor update to update the versions. Meteor deploy, this is what I did when I put my code on plone.meteor.com. I said Meteor deploy, plone.meteor.com. Now that's mine. Meteor add and Meteor remove is to add or remove packages to your application. Add platform is for iOS or Android. Same with install SDK. Meteor Mongo, you get the Mongo shell. Meteor reset, you wipe your database. And lots more. There's a commercial hosting platform that the Meteor group launched to make money off of this. Atmosphere.js is like the PyPy of Meteor, and there's a Meteorpedia. Okay, MongoDB is the default, but it's very pluggable. Unfortunately, with ZODB, we have a quandary because it's Python-centric. Okay, in 4 years ago, a mysterious ZODB WebScale account appeared on Twitter with this announcement. And the date should give it away. It was actually an an April Fool's joke. However, it works. It still works. And you know, it takes a couple minutes to load, but it's 2.8 megabytes. We are pushing more than that now with Plone 5, just in our JS. And if you remember, in 2011 in San Francisco, I don't know who was there, saw Philipp von Weitershausen. He showed us the thing I remember was a 3D movie rendering in the browser, and basically his point was JavaScript and browser hardware and browser hardware and browser JavaScript implementation are getting so powerful that there is no reason anymore to hold back. So maybe it's not a joke. Maybe we could have a mini ZODB in the browser. What I want to do is integrate DDP in the Plone stack using WebSocket's endpoint, see what that does, and use ZODB events to kind of do the round tripping between public commits in the database to notify the client over WebSockets. What's going to happen, we don't know. Single-page applications, full-stack reactivity. There may be some other names coming out in the future, but the direction, I think, is pretty clear. And I think we can transform Plone. I have full confidence in us. Thank you. Questions? No questions? Yeah.
Instead of implementing a mini ZODB, don't you think we could use the Meteor approach with a mini MongoDB and try to hook it to the backend?
Yeah, we could do that, yeah.
Did you start thinking about it?
I did start thinking about it, yes. Didn't get very far, but yeah, that's certainly an option. Or another alternative is to have a way of basically mirror the ZODB into a server-side MongoDB, and then do the DDP over that from that. But it feels dirty.
I was just curious to know how long it took you to write that.
Write what?
The Meteor, Plone.Meteor.
The Plone.Meteor. Most of it took me, like, in my spare time, about a month, just, in my spare time. And then there were bug fixes and further features and all. But from zero. That was my first attempt. All right, thanks a lot.